Okay, I can see the participants number rising up relatively rapidly, so that's good news. That means people are logging into the right place and that we are in the right place as well, which is always a good start. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ali Forbes and I have the pleasure of hosting this panel session today on International Women's Day 2021. On behalf of the Women's Staff Network, I'd like to welcome you to the In Conversation with Inspirational Female Leaders event. We'll be hearing from 4 inspirational women today who will be discussing their careers, sharing their tips for success and answering your questions as well. So with that in mind, a little bit of housekeeping to begin with, just to let you know that this session is being recorded today. So please don't say anything too controversial or anything that you wouldn't like to be recorded and available to view again afterwards. And for those who have questions, and please do ask those questions, can we ask you to use the Q&A box, please, for your questions, as opposed to the chat, just because it gets a little bit tricky to manage if people are asking questions in lots of different places. So please use the Q&A box for questions. If anybody does put any into the chat by accident, we'll just ask you to move that across to the Q&A box. And apart from that, I hope you enjoy the session and the conversations that we have today with our inspirational women. So I'm going to start the panel session today by asking each of our panel members to introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about who they are, their journeys, and why they've chosen to take part in this panel session today on International Women's Day. So Kim, I'm going to come to you first, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Kim Carr. I'm a partner at FBC Manby Bowdler Solicitors, a firm in Wolverhampton that has offices also across Shropshire. And until the 31st of March 2020, I was managing partner at the firm, which was a role that I absolutely loved. I'm also a governor at the University of Wolverhampton and the chair of the Board of Governors. I started, as you will tell from the accent, locally. I was born and grew up in Tipton, and I went to what was then known as Alexandra High School, which I think is now an academy, and was, I know, at one point part of our multi-academy trust within the university. So state school, I went to Birmingham University, where one of my lecturers took great delight in telling me I was a diversity admission. So although I got the same grades as people who had been admitted alongside me, apparently I was allowed in from a state school because they were being generous. So it's fair to say that we didn't get to see eye to eye that particular lecturer. But I enjoyed my time at university. I did my degree in law and decided that was definitely where I wanted to go. So I did what was then known as my solicitors finals, what is now known as the LPC. When I did it, you had to pass it all in one go, otherwise you had to take it all again. I think you could fail 2 exams, but that was it. So yeah, I passed my LPC, got what was then known as Articles of Clerkship, to qualify as a solicitor, and I've been at the same firm ever since I did my articles. So I worked my way up through the firm to, as I say, ultimately become managing partner. And I particularly love that role because it gave me the opportunity to develop other people. It gave me the opportunity to ensure that we were diverse and inclusive in our recruitment, that we supported people on their journeys through the legal profession. And I'm very proud of the fact that the Law Society and the SRA came to talk to us a couple of years ago about how we managed to have such a diversity amongst our qualified population, which was a real boost for me. We were one of the first firms locally to take on apprentice solicitors, which was a new method of qualification that came in probably 4 or 5 years ago. I think our first apprentices are going through that process. And what was great about that was it meant that people who were struggling to afford to do a degree could join the profession. So they get to do their degree whilst they work with us. So they will ultimately come out at the end of the apprenticeship with that same qualification that someone who does it through the traditional route will, but they get to work while they're doing their degree, they get to work while they're learning, which means that they've got an income to support them, and they don't end up at the end of their qualification with a significant debt to pay back. So yeah, that was great. The university, for me, I'm very proud of what the university does in terms of diversity, inclusion and equality. So we really give people an opportunity to be the best versions of themselves. And I think that's all we can ever do for anybody else, is give them that opportunity, give them that chance, help, support. And so I'm quite passionate about it. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks, Ellie.
Brill, that's lovely, Kim. Thank you very much. And that theme about developing other people, I find really interesting, and perhaps something we'll pick back up on in the questions later on. Okay, Inez, I'm going to come to you next, please. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Inez Brown. I am a partner at Harrison Clark Rickaby's Solicitors, but I head the medical negligence team at Medical Accident Group, which is also part of Harrison Clark Rickaby's. I manage a team of 25 people, and in addition to that role, I am also a trustee of the Society of Clinical Injury Lawyers, and I'm also currently the president of Birmingham Law Society. I was inaugurated last July, right in the middle of the pandemic, and unfortunately my presidency has been almost entirely virtual, but I've tried to make sure that I keep our members, which is 5,500 members, including lawyers, barristers, students, and legal execs, paralegals and trainees engaged, and to help them to be part of the Birmingham community. My journey into law, I was a legal secretary for probably 15 or 20 years. I've been qualified as a solicitor for 19 years, and in September I will hit 20 years of being qualified. And the university means a great deal to me because they offered me a lifeline. When I was working full-time as a legal secretary, I decided that I wanted to go back to university to change my career and to study law. And I approached a university in Birmingham who advised me that my kind, and I think that that's the first time I realized that I was a kind, or referred to as a kind, would be better suited to do nursing or social work. And whilst those are good careers, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to study law. I therefore approached Wolverhampton as a mature student, and they welcomed me with open arms and provided me the support, the pastoral care that I needed. And that's something I have never forgotten. And University of Wolverhampton will always play a special role for me. When I became president of Birmingham Law Society, I was able to run a number of initiatives throughout the year, one of which is a diversity and inclusion scheme. I come from a disadvantaged background, and I wanted to make sure that we are able to spot talent within the different communities, and to give students an opportunity to be able to apply for a scholarship to do their legal practice course. Wolverhampton has partnered with me along with the University of Law, and we now have one student who's studying their LPC at Wolverhampton, and we are helping them to continue their journey into law because my firm is offering work experience, mentoring, and also a place on the vacation scheme along with Gately Legal, and we are offering that opportunity to another student from September this year, and I'm hoping that that will be my legacy. So thank you, Wolverhampton. There's so much more to talk about my journey, but I'm sure that you'll get more from me during the discussions. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Inez, and a really interesting journey then, starting out as a legal secretary and deciding that you wanted to come back to university as a mature student. And nice to hear that Wolverhampton didn't class you as a kind of person. God, it, you know, I'm looking at everybody's responses and just, you know, just the shaking of the head that sort of thing is said is, yeah. But this we shall discuss, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Inez. Julia, I'll come to you next, please.
So I'm Julia Clark. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor here at the university. And I guess I think of myself as being something of an accidental Deputy Vice Chancellor. If anybody had said to me, even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, what do you plan to do and how are you going to get there? I would have been, not got a clue, and I don't know, and we'll just see what comes along. And whenever I'm mentoring people now, I'm always, what's your plan and how do you plan to get there? Because I am very conscious that if you've got a plan, you're more likely to get where you want to be than if you don't have. So my journey has been quite meandering, I would say. So I was the first in my family to go to university, but I wasn't just the first in my family, I was the first amongst my friends as well. So I just really had no touch points about what university was when I got there. Any knowledge that I had of universities was through reading books, through reading fiction. I didn't even know what a 2-1 was. So when people were talking about getting a 2-1, I was like, what's that? So I guess I've always been very conscious of people being othered at universities. And for me, that's what's so brilliant about the University of Wolverhampton, is that we seek to ensure that everybody belongs. We don't look at where you came from, we look at what's your talent, what can we do to support you, and as somebody else said, getting to the best version of you. And that best version of you might not just be defined financially. If you look at what our students go on to do, they're not necessarily going on to do jobs that are earning huge financial rewards. Some will, but others are doing things that have much wider benefits that aren't so easily measured financially. And I think that is really an important part of what we do as a university. So from university, I went to train as a chartered accountant. Again, why I did that, I don't know. It was because I had to get a job. And the world, I'd done history as a degree. The world wasn't crying out for historians. So I ambled into accounting. I'm glad I did, because it is a fantastic way to learn about the business world. It was a fantastic education. Again, in terms of things that I didn't know, when I started out, I had no clue what credits and debits were, and that it was all just a strange language. I signed up as an auditor. I didn't know what an audit was at all. So I think my journey has been one of sort of making it up as I go along and seeing where I fit. I did find the world of the big 4 accountancy firms, I mean, it was great. It was really positive. As I said, I learned a lot, but I knew it wasn't where I wanted to be eventually. So I moved back into higher education. I took a job as a research assistant at the University of Central Lancashire. And that's where I think I found, yeah, this is absolutely what I want to do. And it was whilst I was there that I did my first experience of teaching. And I think it may be like when an actor comes off the stage, after that first time in the classroom, I was so scared, so nervous beforehand that I just was like, ugh. But you come off with such an adrenaline rush. And my best ever feedback, I've been in education now a very long time, but I think my best ever feedback was from a student at the University of Central Lancashire who said to me, "You make auditing interesting." I just thought, that's it, I've arrived. So that's my journey. I then have moved through different universities, taking different roles, really roles focusing on students as well as teaching student support. And in terms of where we are today and in International Women's Day, for me, it's really important that we celebrate it as a university, but that we also celebrate truly internationally today, because if you look across our university, women have made, and it's not to say men have not made, a significant contribution to the response to the pandemic, but if we look at women are disproportionately represented in professions, in healthcare, in social care, in education, in retail. So women have been absolute heroines during the pandemic. Many have not made it through the pandemic. Some women sadly have lost their lives. And so I think it is really, really important that we here today reflect on that, reflect on International Women's Day in that context, and undertake to really build back fairer, because what's happened during the pandemic will have a lasting effect, and we need to be very conscious of that as we come out of the pandemic.
Thanks, Julian. Some really important points there. And I like your description of yourself as an accidental Deputy Vice Chancellor. I think that's quite interesting. I'm sure, for all the attendees that are with us today. In perhaps some people will have a clear idea of the journey they want to go on. Others might not be so clear in where they want to go. But yeah, quite interesting description of yourself. I like that. Okay, Nazira, passing over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Yeah, today is International Women's Day, and the theme today for this year is Choose to Challenge. And I think for me, working at the University of Wolverhampton, the work we've been doing is around forging a better working world for our staff, but also a better learning environment for our students. And for me, one of the things is about a gender equal university. Where does this come from? Well, I grew up in South Africa under apartheid, had a indifferent second-class schooling, and I was lucky enough to go to university at the time when the universities were challenged about accepting students like me. When I say the universities were challenged, I mean the so-called white universities were being challenged. And that was because of universities like in the UK were really putting pressure on South African white universities. What I enjoyed most was science, and this was at school, and that sort of excitement about science sustained me, and that's why I chose to study chemistry at university. Chemistry of all the sciences was what really caught my attention, and I enjoyed research quite a lot and decided to continue on this academic journey, and won a scholarship to go to the University of St Andrews in Scotland, and that's where I did my PhD. Of course, my career and my studies had to fit in with my family life. So in between a PhD and the first degree, I had a set of twins, two beautiful girls, and of course they were very delighted to be continent hopping. And so the next choice for us in terms of the next continent to visit, well, who wouldn't choose Florida? So off we went to Florida, much to the girls' delight, several visits to Disney World. And so they have a taste of various different cultures and different ways of learning. So when we decided on Mummy had to get a proper job now, what do I do? Is it industry or academia? I really loved the work I had been doing when I was a postgraduate student, that was demonstrating in labs. And that was the taste I got around teaching, developing support materials for students. And I thought an academic career would be a good choice. Of course, I wasn't completely aware of the challenges of an academic life, especially the pressure of of research grant income and things like that. But of course, where you choose to work can help you and support you in that. And so I was very lucky to get my first academic job in a university that supported the different career choices that I wanted. And the next university I joined after that is University of Wolverhampton, where I am a professor of learning and teaching in science education. So from a chemist to moving into social science has been pretty exciting. And, the University of Wolverhampton, I think I've mentioned our university lots of times, but certainly, definitely has given me all those opportunities to, carry on in that different way in research. And now I'm Pro Vice Chancellor for Regional Engagement. My portfolio includes many different things, including gender equality, race equality, regional engagement, partnership, skills, all the things that I'm really passionate about. So I'm very lucky that my portfolio includes all of this. I don't know if it was made up for me, or it just happened to be that set of things that really attracted me to this role.
Wonderful, thanks Nazira. And to still be here with a smile on your face, having moved from Florida to Wolverhampton in your journey, then the university must be doing something right. And nice to hear about your journey, which has been in different areas of the world, which is really interesting. Okay, we're going to start this panel session on International Women's Day, talking about people that you find inspirational. This was one of the pre-submitted questions from the attendees today. So I'm going to come round to you again in the same order that I did just a minute ago to do the introductions. So Kim, I'm going to come to you first and ask you, who do you find inspirational and what is it about them that inspires you?
So I'm going to pick someone who sadly is no longer with us, but who for me was truly inspirational, and some of you might remember her, some of you might not, and that was Anita Roddick. So what I loved about Anita Roddick, and for most people will remember her for founding the Body Shop, but she did so much more than that. So she was a businesswoman who challenged and made a success in retail at a time when women didn't do things like that necessarily, given she died in 2007. But she was so much more than that. So she was about fair trade. She was about supporting people in the third world in terms of not just her product development, but all sorts of other things that she did. So she did a lot of activism, a lot of campaigning, a lot of ethical consumerism. She just, to me, was one of those women who just got it all right, and did so much to change the way we think about a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things that happen now around ethical consumerism in particular that people probably don't realise started with her. So the Co-op and lots of other institutions have built a lot around that now, but she really pioneered it, and she was very much about that equality, diversity and inclusion that for me is so important. So yeah, that I would say that was what it was about her, was the fact that she was somebody you could look up to, and I think she started things that people don't realise have left a huge legacy. So when Inez was talking about legacy, I think that is so important, that we all have a legacy to leave that is hopefully people we've brought on, people we've developed, or something concrete that's benefited other people. I'm also a real geek about quotes. So people who've worked with me know that almost everything that every talk I do has a quote in it. And one of hers I love, which was, "To succeed, you have to believe in something with such a passion that it becomes reality." And I just think that's huge. And I think for women in particular, we have to be passionate to succeed. I don't think we can do it any other way.
Real, thanks, Kim, and that sounds like a really interesting, inspirational female who's done a lot in the retail sector and left a lasting legacy, which is really great to hear. Inez, I'm going to come to you next, please. Who is your, or who do you find inspirational, and what is it about them that inspires you?
So I find Cherie Blair. I've actually got, speaking for myself, and I'll talk to you about that in a few minutes. I find her extremely inspirational, and I followed her career as a young person, because she was the first. I'm sorry, I've got, when I was in the Teams meeting earlier for the art exhibition, I've left the meeting and I'm getting all these pop-up alerts still coming through, so apologies for that, but I'll move back to Cherie. She was the first in her in her family to attend university. She came from Liverpool, and everyone assumes that she came from a privileged background, but she didn't. She was abandoned by her father very early as a child, and she was brought up by her mother and grandmother, and these were really strong role models for her. They were able to help show her moral compass, and she got a first at university. She had to try and fit in with those from public and private school that she wasn't used to, and then became a very successful barrister in her own right and QC. And we know that she went on to marry Tony Blair, the Prime Minister of the British Prime Minister. But she wrote this book called Speaking for Myself, where she encourages anybody, whether they're females or males, to make sure that you have a plan, as Julia mentioned earlier. Stick to your goal and don't let anything deter you from that. She's been involved in a lot of humanitarian issues, and she has set up the Cherie Blair Foundation, where she's providing support to women in third world countries who are aspiring entrepreneurs, and they raise money so that they can start their own pop-ups, their own career, and they receive the support from the foundation. I had the privilege of interviewing Cherie on the 20th of January in one of my first evenings with, and the audience was so inspired by her. The book's a really interesting read, and I would encourage anyone to buy the book and read it. She's a great inspiration.
Brilliant, thank you, Inez. And I have to admit, I know very little about Cherie Blair, so that does sound like an interesting read, and perhaps, you know, I'm going to have to do my own research and find out a little bit more about these people. Julia, the same question to you, please. So who is it you find inspirational, and what is it about them that inspires you?
Okay, well, I think there's two things. I've been hugely inspired by a number of students that I've met during my time in higher education, because of the ways that they have managed their own journeys through university in the face of significant barriers that have been put in their way. So I think I would very much look at those as an inspiration for myself. In terms of people that others may know, I would perhaps go a little bit further back, and because I'm sitting here in Haworth, I'll pick one of the Brontes. So Charlotte Bronte, I think, is inspirational as somebody who was just massively determined. So we come back to that idea of planning and determination. She was the driving force in terms of getting their books published. She walked, and I live in Haworth. Keighley, where the nearest train station is about 5 miles away. She walked in Victorian clobber, carrying a trunk to get a train to London to go and have a speculative meeting with a publisher to try and get her books published, not just for her, but also for her sisters. And, you know, I've done that walk, going to pick my car up from getting serviced. It's okay in flat shoes and you know, casual wear. but to do that and to live in that restricted society and to make that impact. And then the points that Kim and Ina's talked about in terms of heritage, the heritage that she leaves, and there was definitely a job done by another Victorian author who I do admire hugely. Mrs. Gaskell actually started it to really create a myth around Charlotte and the other Brontes as a meek and mild Victorian woman. But if you look at her books, if you read her books, her heritage stands out because she's really sharp. She's really quite nasty. She really comments on, again, coming back to the point I was talking about othering, the way that certain people are othered by societies and the impact that has on them. And I remember reading at a very young age, Jane Eyre, and the description of the death of Helen Burns in that book, and just the outrage that you feel, the sorrow that you feel at the way somebody was just thrown away by society, and that happened for real, and it continues to happen for real. So she would be one of my inspirations, definitely.
Thanks very much, Julia. Okay, Nazira, can you tell us about who your who inspires you and what it is about them that inspires you?
It's so difficult to choose, Ali. There's so many people that that inspire me, but I think I have to choose my mum. She brought up two young children, being widowed, you know, when the children were very, very young, and you know, she was so resilient. She just never gave up. And what I learned from her was not to be angry about things that happen to you, and kindness, you know, how kindness would really, you know, bring you so much other than what you expect. You know, you bring in friendships, you bring in other inspirational things, such as you know, communities. You are able to join other communities, and because of the way she worked and because of her being so kind, it meant that we were very connected with a lot of organizations in the community. And so I learned at a young age the value of volunteering and recycling. I think that's where I get my sustainable practice from, or my greening initiatives, because it was of that kind of community work and having to make do, even though I didn't realize it was about having to make do. I just thought it was, you know, a great fun, tearing up old clothes and making duvet covers, although we didn't call them duvets at that time. But you know, I thoroughly enjoyed all of that. But in terms of other women that have inspired me, I think I have to choose Rosalind Franklin. She is really inspirational. She was recognized after her death for her contributions to the discovery of the structure of DNA. And I think very relevant for now is the work that she did around viruses, which you know, has been truly helpful in getting us oh, I just had the vaccine recently and I just forgot the word vaccine, you know, and helped us in creating vaccines. So certainly I would choose my mum as the most inspirational person for me, and then with some difficulty, because there's so many others, but I thought Rosalind Franklin was very current for the work that she's done, and she's done such a lot of wide variety of work. She even did research on coal as well, so you know, quite a lot of different things. So one can do a lot of things that might not be recognized while they are alive. And I think we just need to make sure that their untold stories are being told.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Nazira, and really interesting to hear who you all selected there as who inspires you, but also why those people you selected inspire you. Okay, we're going to move on to some questions. I can see a few questions coming into the Q&A box now, so I've got a few that I've pre-prepared, so I'll start with one of those and then I'll have a little look at what's coming into the Q&A chat box, and we'll go to the audience and start to take some of their questions. But one of the things I'd quite like to know is, I guess, some of the challenges that you've overcome in your careers, because I think that, you know, we always talk and look, and we've brought you together as 4 inspirational women, but I'm sure there are moments in your career where you felt you've had to overcome barriers and challenges. So what has been the biggest challenge you've faced in your career, and how did you deal with that, and how did you overcome that? Inez, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay.
Thank you, Ali. The biggest challenge for me was once I qualified as a solicitor. I actually wanted to qualify into one of the commercial sectors, but it wasn't meant to be. And I later realised that it was because at the time it was not the norm for Black people to be commercial lawyers. And I think there was still a lot of stigma at the time around whether or not business people would be able to accept a Black solicitor. So I was directed down the PI route, the personal injury / clinical negligence route, which actually I'm pleased that that was the route that I took in the end. But I did not receive the support, and we heard Julia and also you know, Kim mentioned earlier about making sure that we develop people and that pastoral care is provided. I did not receive any support, any pastoral care when I qualified. And it was a very, very difficult time for me, because as a new lawyer, when you're a trainee, you are involved in different projects for cases. So you don't really run a case from beginning to end. You don't have a full caseload either. So upon qualification, I was handed 50 cases that I needed to progress, but didn't really receive the support that I needed. And this continued for, I would say, about 3 to 4 years. And I wasn't quite sure what to do. And I decided that I was the only person who could change the career. I was the only person who needed to make sure that I spoke to someone about this. So I plucked up the courage. I was not receiving a salary increase for a number of years as well. And I decided to speak out to HR about this, but be mindful that I need to remember that I'm part of a team and that I need to work with people. And I explained the lack of supervision that I was receiving. At the time, the managing partner said to me that he was very, very concerned that I didn't receive that support. And in fact, later on in that week, they were going to send me a letter to tell me that I'd been made redundant because I could not manage my caseload. But because I'd spoken out, they realised that they needed to put measures in place to help me. And I was able to change my supervisor, but I also spoke to my then supervisor to explain the difficulties that I saw and to give him an opportunity to put things right, which he appreciated. My view is although we find ourselves in difficult circumstances, we must always try to find a way out of those circumstances. And it's not my I will never look at colour as the first reason for difficulties. I question myself about my ability. Is there something that I could do better that will help to improve the situation? Thankfully, that was the best thing that I did, because the person that I received as my supervisor, he has changed my career totally. He helped me to be the best solicitor that I could be. The situation also helped me to understand that I need to make sure that with my junior solicitors or anyone that I work with at the Law Society, that I'm providing support, that I'm providing training, that I provide supervision and the pastoral care that they need in order to achieve their best potential. So although it was a difficult time, I was able to turn that around and to use it as a strength and to apply a lot of lessons learned going forward in my career. So it's something I will never forget. And I think the best thing for me was that that person contacted me about 3 years ago to ask me for a job at my firm, in my team. And I think, although I didn't offer him a job because there were no vacancies, and I'm not someone who will hold on to my past. I think that we should always be offering a helping hand to anyone. It was great to see that they thought that I was such a great solicitor that they would even think of asking me for a job and talk about the achievements, my achievements. So difficult time, but I've come through that, and it's made me who I am.
Thanks very much for sharing that, Inez, and really interesting. And I guess just raising that lack of awareness, I think can be really important. And obviously for you, that really changed then your journey. Okay, I think Nazira, I'm going to come to you. What's the biggest challenge that you've faced throughout your career, and how did you overcome that challenge?
I think a challenge that has probably stuck with me and influenced much of my work is racism. Abuse for stating that there is structural racism in universities. That is something that has really stuck with me. The Athena Swan initiative that universities have all embraced, highlights and puts in place good plans, good actions, and absolutely great commitment from universities to address gender equality. And I think the next stage, which we at Wolverhampton have really embraced and taken forward, is that interconnections between race, inclusivity, justice, as well as gender equality, because all of these are interconnected. While Athena Swan has made great progress for gender equality for women, it probably hasn't gone as far to ensure equality for all women, and Black women, brown women, all colors, all ethnicities, and so that is of particularly importance now, as Julia mentioned earlier, the impact of COVID as well. I think I read somewhere that the impact of COVID takes away years of progress in terms of gender equality. Someone tried to put a number on it, and it wasn't 42, but it was, I think, 25 or something like that, years of progress that has, that we will lose. And so for me, as a university, then how do we bring in together all the work we are doing around gender equality, but making sure that interconnectedness of race, but also the impact of the pandemic is brought within our thinking and our planning.
Thanks, Nazira, and that's a message that it's not the first time I've heard that message. I've done, as part of my work, I'm quite heavily involved in the Athena Swan work in sport, and so to keep hearing that message again, you know, that Athena Swan is advancing equality for white women, but not for all women. I think that's something that we really need to think about and consider. You know, okay, so how do we bring that to the forefront? So thank you for sharing that. Kim, I'm going to come to you, please. What's your the biggest challenge that you've faced, and how did you deal with that?
So in many ways not dissimilar to some of the things that Nazira and Inez have said. It was attitude. So when I left my training at the College of Law and was applying for training contracts, although we probably were not quite at that stage equal women and men coming out of that course, we were certainly as women struggling to get training contracts or articles of clerkship as they were then. And it was the attitudes around some of the firms that I applied to, because I'd gone to state school. I was the first one in my family to go to university. I famously went to an interview in Birmingham, and on that day at a large Birmingham firm, they were interviewing for some secretaries and they were interviewing for some article clerks. And I went in and I got sent along to a room to sit with the other candidates and got into the interview, and I'd been sent to the secretaries' interviews rather than the interviews for the article clerks. It was tough at that point entering the profession as a woman. I cannot imagine what it would be like had I had any other issues that I've got. But attitudes have changed. I think we have made progress. But we still have an awful long way to go. I can still remember going to my first meeting with other managing partners at an event that had been organised for managing partners, and walking into a room full of 35 white men in suits, and just being met with complete disbelief that I was in there, basically. And I think it is just meeting those attitudes, interestingly, with something Nazira said, with kindness. So don't get angry, because angry doesn't actually, you just get written off as a neurotic woman if you get angry in those situations. So you have to stay calm, and you have to stay quiet, and you have to reason with the people. But you also have to understand that sometimes you can't reason with someone who is unreasonable. So actually don't put your energy and effort into changing the attitude of someone you are never going to change. Work with the people who are open, work with the people who are willing to listen. So I did have at my firm a man called David Baxter, who was an amazing guy, who was open, who only cared about what you could do, who only cared about what value you could bring to him and his business, and was willing to give everybody an opportunity. And so for me, it was working with him to change the attitudes of some of the other people I was working with. And I think that's a journey that I wish I could say to everyone today, we've succeeded, we're there, that journey's ended. I don't think it has. I think we've still got a long way to go. And I think people will still face those barriers, and those barriers will be there for the reasons of intersectionality, as Nazira and Inez have indicated. But we just have to keep going and doing it in the right way by being ourselves. So I'm a huge believer in authenticity. Be who you are and change things in your way. Don't try to be somebody you're not, and don't try to change yourself to fit with someone else's attitudes. Change the attitudes of those people who can be. Thanks, Ali.
Brilliant, thanks very much, Kim. Right, apologies, Julia, the questions are flying into the Q&A now, and I'm conscious that if I ask everybody every question, we're going to run out of time and we won't get through all of the questions from the attendees. So I'd like to move across to the Q&A chat box and maybe ask you some of the questions that have come in from our attendees today. Okay, we've got a question from Christina here, so perhaps keeping on this theme of some of the barriers that you faced. Christina's asked, what advice would you give to a colleague who's experiencing the most subtle side of sexism and misogyny, such as being talked over or interrupted in meetings, etc.? I tell you what, Julia, I might come to you first, as I didn't ask you the previous question. So advice for colleagues who are experiencing these more subtle forms of sexism or any other discrimination, what would your advice be?
Thanks. It's a really good question, and I guess my advice would be twofold. One is, don't feel it's your responsibility. It's not your problem. It's the problem of the people who are doing that, and it reflects the structural inequalities that we still have within our society. But having said it's not your problem, don't feel scared about calling it out. It can be difficult to call it out at the time of the meeting, but I think the points that have been made by Nazira and Kim about kindness, so I think there's something about keeping calm and trying to respond in a very calm way and trying to get your point across. If you're finding, there's a pattern of behaviour here, though, that is something we need to pick up organisationally and look at that. So if this is an experience that women are finding, then there's something we need to do organisationally, because, as I say, the problem is not your problem, it's the problem in terms of the response you're receiving. So yes, try and call it out, respond calmly. If that doesn't work, bring it to the women's network, for example, for us to think about how we ensure that our meetings are properly inclusive.
Thanks very much, Julia. I think some sound words of advice there. Do any other of our panelists want to add on to any advice there from Julia?
I was going to agree with Julia that you do need to call it out, but there is, you've got to make sure that you do it in the right way. I think as women, we are fearful that if we call it out, we could lose our jobs, we could be ostracised. So you do need to think about how you do it. It's always better to have it on the record. So if you can speak to someone about it so that they're aware that, this is a problem, I think that we need to take a step back. We need to think about our responses. There are many occasions where I've experienced misogyny in my career, and I never reply immediately. I always draft a response and I put it in my draft box and I go back to it and I think about it, because it's interesting that when you are on the receiving end, when you're the victim, the person who is being misogynistic, they don't think about your feelings or how you're going to take that. We need to think about what we do and the way that we respond, and we need to make sure that we are always kind to those around. Although many of us as women have faced injustice in our lives, it doesn't mean that we need to meet injustice with injustice. We need to be kind. We need to show them that we are better than them, but call it out. And it's amazing how, especially after the Me Too movement, when you do call it out, there is someone there to listen and to help you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Inez and Julia. Okay, there's an interesting question in the Q&A. This has been posted anonymously, but I'm going to open this up. So open floor. Have you ever suffered with imposter syndrome in your senior roles, and how have you dealt with that? So feel free to kind of show hands and
yes, so I'll show hands on that one straight away. So even when I got the email about talking today, I questioned whether or not I was a suitable person to to speak. We are all going to get that at some point, and when you do, just stop and look back at what you've done, what you've achieved. Give yourself credit for what you've done and a pat on the back for it, but don't ever think you'll reach a stage in your career where you won't feel like, why me? Why am I here? What am I doing? Yeah, absolutely. It happens to all of us, and it is not something to be ashamed of. But do give yourself credit for what you've done, because I think all too often, as women in particular, we assume we're in the wrong first. We assume that if there's a problem, it's our responsibility to fix it, and sometimes it's not. And actually, you have every right to be where you are doing what you're doing. But yeah, I get it all the time.
So yeah, it's not something that goes away then, even if you step into more senior roles. Julia, I've just got a little note that says you need to leave at 12. So did you want to add on if you've got anything to say with regards to that question before you go?
Huge amount of imposter syndrome that I inhabit, and that comes from a real fundamental lack of confidence. One of the massive positives of getting older, there are some, is I have become more confident because I've become more accepting of myself. Historically, I was incredibly hard on myself in ways that I wouldn't be on other people. At least I hope I wouldn't be. But and just accepting things, and accepting that, you know, is the classic thing I once heard the Vice Chancellor of Manchester University say, and it made me apply for a job I wouldn't have otherwise applied for, that when a woman looks at a job description, she says, I can't do half of that, whereas a man will look at it and go, I can do half of that, I'm going to apply. And I heard her say that on Desert Island Discs, bizarrely, just before the Manchester Met Deanship job came up. And I was like, I'd seen it advertised, and I was like, oh no, I can't do half of that. And then I heard her say that, and then when I was contacted about it, I thought, why not go for it?
Yeah, that's something I've definitely heard before as well, in terms of how we as women would read job adverts and applications. So perhaps a message we need to start thinking slightly differently, and just go for it. If you think you can do something, put yourself forward, and maybe step out that comfort zone a little bit. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Julia.
Thanks, and I have to go, so thank you for letting me participate today.
No worries. Thank you very much, Julia, for participating. Okay, we'll keep on the theme of imposter syndrome. So Inez or Nazira, do you want to?
I'll come in at the moment, and I've tried everything to stop these alerts, and I apologise profusely. I'll still keep trying in the background. Strangely enough, I do not experience imposter syndrome, and it's not because I'm overly confident, it's because I take the view that I've worked so hard to achieve what I have achieved that I have a right to be here. And if I walk into a room, I always feel it's your right to be here. I'm not saying that I don't experience nerves, and I do, and I normally have to take a step back and do some breathing exercises. But I think everybody on this platform has worked hard to be where we are. And I remember the first time I was asked about imposter syndrome, I actually said to the chair, I'm quite insulted by that question, not in a bad way. But why is it that for women, we are always asked whether we experience imposter syndrome? It's not a question that is put to men. Yeah. And so I usually say, no, everything that you've done, you've achieved, you've worked hard. It is your right to be here, and grab it with both hands and try and be confident in what you do. So I'm the president of Birmingham Law Society, and quite a few people had said to me, oh, we didn't think that you would do such a good year. Oh, your initiatives are great. Oh, we weren't expecting it to be such a success. And my response has been, why not? they're unable to reply. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Inez. And I really like that as a message. You know, it's your right to be here. And I think we could probably all tell ourselves that a little bit more often. And yes, kind of channel things as nerves, but not as feeling like we're imposters. Thanks, Inez. Okay, right, bear with me whilst I scroll down these questions. Okay, we've got a question directed to you, Nazira, so I'll come to you with this one if that's okay. So a question from Joy. Nazira, has gender and race inequalities played a big part in your career, and how did you approach this and overcome these challenges?
Yeah, I was trying to answer the question in the chat box too, so sorry I didn't quite finish it. My power was about to go, so I had to reach down and just press the power back on. So to answer that question around how to overcome these challenges, I've always had to have someone give me a push and a nudge in my career, and the power and the value of allyship as well should not be underplayed in terms of all of the challenges, whether they challenges around gender or race or any other kind of challenges that we face. We talked about the imposter syndrome, and you know, while you know, Inez is lucky enough that you know, she's not had a feeling of yes, you know, I've not, I don't feel that. But I think for quite a lot of women and men, and it depends on their background, because sometimes we do make these generalizations. I think there is that sense of whether you belong in a particular place or you can make a particular contribution. So one of my mechanisms for coping has always been to be prepared. So I always fully prepare when I'm especially when I'm in a new surrounding and in a new network or a new meeting. One of the very good tips I got from my mentor is always have a prepared question, you know, so that one, people know that you are in the room, and two, so that you know you are engaging in a session. Because one of the things about me that I've shared with colleagues at Wolverhampton in a previous session was that I am quite a shy person, and I, you know, not, of course, not once you get to know me, you know, but you know, when I'm new with people, then it does take a while for me to get going. And so it's about that that being prepared, having the right networks, having the right allies, and these are the things that have really helped me to challenge the racism or sexism that I might have experienced, and using the systems, the systems in the universities, the policies in universities, to be able to challenge that. Now, not all systems, policies, processes are fit for purposes in different organizations, but I think we have those in our university. So please, you know, use them. I did, not at Wolverhampton, I didn't need to, but I have used them during my academic career, because I've not worked outside universities. That's the only working world I know. But I've had to use this recently in a professional body capacity. And so, you know, it's the policies and the procedures in an organization actually can help you, you know, in challenging sexist and racist behaviors.
Thanks very much, Nazira. I think to pick up on your the point that you make there, that the value of having allies, and there's another question in the Q&A about the roles that white women can play as allies to support BAME women. The question is actually directed to Julia and Kim, to see any role that white women play as allies to support BAME women. So Kim, I'll come to you first, but maybe Nazira and Inez, you can feed into this conversation as well.
Yeah, so I think there is definitely a role there for us as white women to support colleagues and others. And I think one of the things that we possibly have to get over is, because I think as women we will hesitate to sometimes to reach out for fear of offending or upsetting, and again it's a corny quote, but a candle doesn't lose anything by lighting another candle. You know, if we can help someone else, if we can make someone else's life easier, if we can support and act as allies, then to me there's no reason why you wouldn't do that. And I think we have to get better at strengthening the links that exist so that people feel they can do what they can to support others. And I'd say that not just for white women supporting BAME, and I know BAME isn't necessarily the right phrase, it causes a lot of but supporting other people who are disadvantaged in any way. So, I have a disabled son, so I feel quite passionate about the fact that, disability sometimes, we could do much more to help people with disabilities succeed in the workplace. We can do more to help others succeed in the workplace. And basically, if you're in a position to help someone else, you should do it whatever you can do for someone else. And just be conscious of those people who might need a little bit more help, not because they're not as good, not because they haven't got the right to be successful, but because they've got an extra barrier to overcome, whatever that barrier might be. So yeah, absolutely, there's a role there.
Thanks, Kim. Inez and Nazira, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to endorse what Kim has just said. It was interesting to hear Nazira speak about allyship, and allyship is the key. We need allies to help us to succeed. And as women, we've struggled to get to where we are for so many years. And we heard about the 100 years of women in law and all the events that took place last year. And we need to offer a helping hand to other women in the profession to help them to be able to, or give them opportunities. Now, had it not been for allyship in my career, and the allies for me was a man, Anthony Collins, and I'm happy to name him, and also Her Honour Judge Kirkham. And these two individuals said to me that they saw that there was potential and there was talent, and they wanted to help me. So they would introduce me to individuals and open doors for me so that I could have a stepping stone, a helping hand to achieve my abilities. And that is something that I pass on to everybody, not just women. I will pass it on to men. If we can help each other in this sector in order to raise the profile of the legal profession, it's all about helping each other, working together. And we do need to make sure that we are allies, that we are mentors to those who are entering the profession and those who would like to progress in their career. And I really thank those who have been allies to me, and it's something I will never forget.
Yeah, Ali, it's not much more that I can add, just to endorse what Inez and Kim has said. But we shouldn't underplay the powerful allyship from men. And Inez mentioned white man who was a powerful ally for you. My mentors, most of my mentors have been and are white men. I don't know whether they come from middle-class backgrounds or not, but they have been absolutely life-changing for my career. And And so allyship works across genders, I think, and we need to use that and work in partnership with men on this. But white women in particular can be very powerful allies for the Black and minority women in their workplace, and to be able to challenge and speak up alongside these women. So one of the things for me in my role here as Pro Vice Chancellor for regional engagement is that intersection between race and gender. And we have captured this at the university within our race equality action plan. There are lots of actions in there, but we've captured some of these intersections in terms of how we want to progress the careers of all women who work in our organization. But of course, there is a lot of work to do, and we have to do it together. So we have to choose to challenge all together.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much to all of you, and some important messages in there, I think, in terms of the importance of allyship, but also how we can go about acting in particular ways to offer that continuous support. Okay, we have another question. Would you advise your younger selves to do anything differently?
Shall I jump in there straight away? Definitely not. No. I think the only thing I would tell my younger self is that I should read more widely outside of science. And so I've come to social sciences in some ways quite late in my own learning. But yeah, I absolutely enjoy what I do, and I would have liked my daughter to have followed in my footsteps, but no, she chose a different career.
Thanks, Nazira.
I think the only thing I'd say is be braver sooner. Julia said confidence comes with age, and I have certainly become more confident as I've got older and more accepting of myself. But if you could have given a little bit of that to yourself a little bit earlier on, I think that would have helped.
For me, I believe that everything happens at the right time. And although I started out as a legal secretary, it's helped me with my organisational skills. And I could not be running a department of 25 and also president of Birmingham Law Society if I was not able to apply organisational skills. It also helped me to understand the importance of working as part of a team, which is just so crucial if you want to have success. But I would not change anything. I absolutely love my profession. I love the work that I do in helping to achieve compensation for brain injured children, because that's the area of law that I specialise in, and it makes such a difference to those children and their families. But also being able to be president of Birmingham Law Society, that could not have happened if I was not a lawyer. It could not have happened without allies, and it could not have happened if I didn't volunteer. And so I just want to say to everyone, it is so important to have extracurricular activities, that you stand out, that you are able to give back to your community and be part of a community. And it's really, really helped me with my leadership skills as well. And yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I'm grateful.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you all. Laura has asked about, do you think supportive families and personal relationships are important too in fostering successful careers? I don't know if anyone wants to. Kim, you've unmuted. Go on, you start.
Yeah, so I would say it is. I mean, I was lucky in that my parents, although they'd never experienced university, were very supportive of me going, and did what they could in their own ways to support. And I've been lucky in having, you know, a good supportive relationship. I don't think it means you can't succeed without it. So I think there are lots of examples of people who succeed against the odds in that way. But I think if you've got it, it can make life a lot easier, you know. So for me, as I said, I've got a disabled son. My husband gave up his career to look after our son so that I could continue with mine, you know. So I can't underestimate the benefit for me, but I don't think if it isn't there that you can't still succeed. So I wouldn't say to anyone that it means if you haven't got it, you can't do it. You can, it's just not going to be, it's going to be a bit tougher for you.
Thanks, Kim. Would anyone else like to add?
I was going to say I'll allow Nazira to go before me because she put her hand up. And
Sorry, Nazira, go on.
So kind. Definitely for me, the supportive, you know, family and personal relationships have been crucial. I think my successes, my achievements, you know, come from both my family life and from friendships as well. You know, I live in the UK now, but most of my family is outside the UK, and so the personal relationships here are as much as they would have been with you know, with blood relatives, as it were. And yeah, hugely important. I just cannot I cannot describe the kind of difficult decisions one has to make in life, and having to make those with you know, with people who are close to you is really important, and that kind of sustains you through to the next journey. So definitely, yeah, huge.
Absolutely, I totally agree with everything that both Kim and Nazira have said. When my mother came to the UK, she didn't have the same opportunities that we have who were born in the UK, and she encouraged her children to make sure that we all studied and that we got a career. Because law is my second career, my husband, I just got married and I decided that I was going to go back to school, and he supported me, paid for me through university and also to do my legal practice course. He has been my rock throughout my career as well, someone that I can go to, talk to and ask for advice. Someone who's been extremely instrumental as well was my French teacher at secondary school, sorry. And I used to really be embarrassed about my background, that I lived on a council estate, didn't want anyone to come and visit me because my friends were middle class, they were from middle class families. And she said to me, never hide who you are. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And that's all you need to think about. Some of us have more opportunities than others, but when you finish, you may be at the same stage of them or ahead of them. So Nazira's right that friends, family, people who can support you, we all need that network of support to see us through in our careers.
Thank you all. Okay, I'm just going back through. We've got lots of comments, so I'll leave the comments to the end because I think there's some nice comments in there and kind of thank yous, but I'll read those out as we sum up. So I'm just looking for some of the other questions. Joy would like to know what you consider the biggest achievement in your own careers.
I'll start. My biggest achievement, when I was at the first firm that I told you about earlier in the conversation where I struggled, I was constantly being told that I would not achieve anything. There was nothing special about me. In fact, I remember the comment was I was unremarkable. I think when someone tells you you're unremarkable, what are you supposed to do with that? But the good thing is I take on board everything that anyone says, whether it's constructive or whether it's destructive. And I will hold on to the constructive comments and just park the destructive comments. And for me to be able to go to a firm who didn't see that, they see ability, Harrison Clark Rickaby's do, and they offered me the opportunity of developing and expanding my team, because when I started it was myself and my PA, and to build that team to 25, for me that is such a major achievement. The next biggest achievement for me is being president of Birmingham Law Society, because all those people who made those negative comments, they receive a magazine on a monthly basis called the Birmingham Law Society Bulletin, where they hear a word from their president. And it's really quite satisfying for me to be able to write an article and not necessarily demonstrate that I did achieve, but I'm at the top of my game, and I'm in charge of a profession of 5,500 lawyers. So I just wanted to say, never give up on your dream. Don't let anyone deter you, because as long as you have a plan, as long as you have the support, you can achieve.
Thanks, Inez. Nazira, would you like to?
Did you say biggest achievement, Ali? Yep.
Sorry, I've muted myself. Yes, biggest achievement, yeah.
So I think for me and my family, when I became Professor of Learning and Teaching in Higher Education at Wolverhampton, that was definitely one of the proudest moments. But in terms of my career and living in different countries, meeting different people, all of that, I think was made possible because I chose to go into a career in higher education. So all of that ties in with this professorship in learning and teaching in higher education. So yeah, I asked my family to call me Professor Karodia, for at least a month, but they gave up after a few hours.
I find that quite a difficult one to answer, but I think probably becoming managing partner and having the opportunity to influence, as I say, and give opportunity to others, being able to lead a firm as in sort of 250 people and be able to offer them all opportunities, but also to lead them through tough times as well. So not just the easy bits. I was there through the 2008 recession, and being able to just interact with people who were really positive in the moment, but also when they weren't, have the chance to help them do something about it. So yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky. I consider it an honour to be on the board at the university. I think that is an honour. I'm chair of the board of LawNet, which is a sort of network of independent law firms. But I think being managing partner is still for me the biggest achievement.
Wonderful, thanks all. Being conscious of the time, it's 12:25. That seems to have flown by, that hour and a half. Certainly it did for me. So there's a few comments in the Q&A box as opposed to questions. So I'd just like to read some of those out. So Anonymous, the panel have been very inspiring. Although outwardly confident, I feel that I can now move forward with my career and not to doubt myself. So I think that's a really nice message to have from somebody there in terms of improving their self-belief. This is more just a general comment than a question. I think having this kind of event is incredibly powerful in championing women in leadership. It would be great to have representation from younger female leaders and potentially leaders at different levels. I think leadership isn't necessarily about senior leadership. It means different things for different people. I love the intersectionality of this panel though. Smiley face. So yeah, I think a comment there I just want to add on. I'm currently part of a team that hosts My Career Journey, which is an inspirational women's talk and networking event that we're running through our Athena Swan work. And the next panel is about traversing career pathways. So I'd encourage people to come to that event. It's not the most senior women in the university, it's people working in different positions and who have come and stepped across into leadership at different levels. So if that's what you're looking for, a little plug to my own event, if you don't mind. Mac, I found this event very inspirational. Thank you to everybody. I am so enthused. Yep, so I think some comments in there. You know, I just want to thank you all for giving your time today to speak with myself and all of the attendees who have been here. I think I was just trying to, when chairing, you're trying to listen, but you're also trying to take notes and write. So there were some themes that I picked out, and I think this is what's really stood out to me. So I'll probably try and wrap up with this, in that you're all people who really prioritise helping others, and I think that's a really nice thing to see. You know, women who are extremely successful in their own careers but leading by example, recognising where you've been supported by others and really making sure that you kind of pass that forward. So I think that's a really nice message. The fact that we need to be allies together and help each other, I think is something that came out strongly. Have the confidence in yourself, challenge inequality and speak up, but do that using the appropriate forums and with kindness and empathy, and that will stand you in good stead. I really liked Inez, I think this was your point, remember you have the right to be here, and yeah, never give up. And I think they were some of the key messages that I pulled out from the conversations that we've had, and that's how I'd like to summarise. So thank you to our panel, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and for talking with us today. And on behalf of the Women's Staff Network, thank you to all of the attendees who signed up and joined us, and thank you to everyone who posted questions in the chat. And I do apologise if I didn't get to your question. There did end up being quite a few to try and get through. Thanks everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the session.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.